Good morning and welcome to yet another exciting episode of The Conversation with me, Denise Shorai, a platform where we deliberate on topical issues affecting the nation of Zimbabwe. And today I'm joined by Mr. Peter Mtasa, the President of Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, in discussing the plight of Zimbabwean workers. Good morning, Mr. Mtasa, and welcome to the conversation.
Good morning, Denise, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for gracing us today. The first question would be, what is the current status of the labor force in terms of remuneration?
Right, so we have a real crisis in this country. The government does not want to acknowledge and accept that we've got a crisis. But when we look at the labor market, and especially the wages, we've got a serious labor market crisis. We have a very sad situation that is only reminiscent of the colonial era or the apartheid era, where workers were not valued and they were not respected and they had no dignity. This is what we are facing today. If you look at the remuneration aspect, both in private and in public sector, and also in informal economy, workers are earning pathetic salaries. For example, the gazetted salaries for domestic workers are 900 Zimbabwean dollars. 900 Zimbabwean dollars is $9 US in the market. And $9 US is equivalent to 9 loaves of bread. So we are earning, workers in the domestic sector are earning 9 loaves of bread for working for almost 30 days because they work 6 days a week. And this is pathetic. We don't think there is anywhere else in this world where someone is working for 9 loaves of bread. If you look at the minimum wage, the national minimum wage in the country, which is also gazetted and a government policy for that matter, it is 2,500 Zimbabwean dollars. 2,500 Zimbabwean dollars is equivalent to 25 US dollars. And if you take again the loaves of bread, it means someone is working for 25 loaves of bread for spending the whole month in a mine, in a manufacturing industry, or in a plantation. Someone earns 25 US dollars. 25 US dollars is not sufficient just for rental. People are paying 20 US dollars on average for one room. So if you are just barely working and living in one room, you are left with 5 US dollars. And if you pay electricity, $5, so it means just for one room. We have not spoken about clothing. We have not spoken about the transport to work. But the cost of living is so high. The poverty datum line is currently 17,244, thereabout. And this 2,500, it's less than 16% of the poverty datum line. So people are living miserable lives. I was checking, the last time I checked with the public sector, a B1, which is the lowest grade, was earning 2,500, and a B2 was earning 2,800 in the government, in the public sector. If you then go to the informal economy, the situation is even worse because it depends also on their daily takings from the incomes of the formal sector workers. So someone is on a market stall, but there are no buyers because the formal sector workers have no disposable income. So workers are generally and literally slaves in this country. This is why even previously valued professions like doctors, nurses, teachers, they are now incapacitated and they are now always on strike. I don't think you can now go to a primary school, grade 1, grade 2, and when teachers ask you what do students want to be, you can't hear them saying, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a nurse anymore, because the professions have been reduced to something else, to paupers. People are suffering. So people are sleeping hungry. Families are without food. Families are failing to buy cooking energy. It is pathetic. I can just sum it up that way.
So, Mr. Mtasa, there have been strikes and demonstrations within the public and the private sector. What could be the remedy to this?
So the first thing is that the remedy is there in law. We have the right to strike in terms of the Constitution. We also have the right to collective bargaining in terms of the Constitution. In terms of all of the Labor Act, workers in this country have got a right to collective bargaining. Unfortunate, and the right to strike as well. Unfortunately, Zimbabwe currently is a failed state. It is a failed state. It is in many ways, it is a state that is now failing to provide security of persons. People are not safe in this country. You have heard of the abductions. We are also victims of abductions. Our relatives have been abducted and tortured. We have heard many cases, the MDC trio, Mtawanda Mchewa. Many people are living in fear. So the state is failing to provide security. In fact, it is the state and its militias and its underground state agents who are actually unleashing brutality against citizens. So that's a state failure. You also have the state failing to provide public service. Almost everything. Hospitals have been closed. Schools are closed. Potholed roads, no water and sanitation. You also have indication of state failure in that there is an economic implosion with inflation over 761, which is actually a conservative figure. We think it's much more than that. It has been massaged many times. You can see that there is state failure. Poverty, 72% of people were in poverty in the last year, and 34% of them in abject poverty. This figure has obviously gone up so high because all the working class are now living in abject poverty. So that's state failure, but it is a result of many factors. The main factor is that for many years, the government has taken a neoliberal approach to economics. So it has decimated our manufacturing, it has decimated ability to generate income for the country. It has also whittled down workers' power, collective power, and the power of collective bargaining, which is a very important welfare or public policy for redistribution of incomes from corporates to workers and to the fiscus. But above everything else, the main reason for state failure is the militarization of the state. So where you have a military state, all rights are suspended. So you can't access rights through the Constitution. We've got the rights in the Constitution, but they're just there cosmetically. In practice, you can't access the right to strike because you'll be abducted, you'll be tortured. You also do not have the right to collective bargaining because collective bargaining has to be backed with the right to strike, the right to use power play using the collective power of workers. But the moment you demonstrate at a company, you are at that the black boot, the riot squad, and the military and the militia will come heavily on you. You also see that in a military state, all constitutional institutions like judiciary and police and many other constitutional institutions that are there to secure the rights and safeguard the rights of citizens and workers are also paralyzed and captured. So for workers, we know that going to court is wasting time with a labor dispute. You saw the Zua judgment. We've received many other judgments after that. The judiciary is clearly against the working class. There's now a conflation between the ruling political elites and the business elites, and these have captured the judiciary. You cannot get justice for workers in the courts. So this is why we are in trouble. So under that circumstance, the only way people can fight both state authoritarianism and neoliberalism is to use active citizenry. The workers and the citizens must come together and continue to make necessary noise, peaceful demonstrations, peaceful protests, peaceful petitions. That's the only way we can win this struggle. It has worked before, even in colonial Rhodesia. In 1945, 1948, there were railway strikes, there were national shutdowns, and unfortunately, a sad indictment, the authorities in the when workers shut down the country, they didn't abduct them and tortured them and killed them. They set up a commission of inquiry to look into the working condition, fast track into post-independent state. When you call for a national shutdown or general strike, you are abducted, you are killed. This is a sad indictment on the yesteryear liberators who have become brute oppressors. So workers, there's no way we can get out of this. Tomorrow, South Africa is going to shut down. COSATU, FEDUSA, NACTU, and SAFTU, all the federations have decided to close the whole gigantic economy of South Africa to demand a living wage. But they are much better there. In South Africa, a teacher in South Africa is earning almost $1,000 versus a teacher in Zimbabwe is earning $35. But they are closing it. So we need to use the power that liberated this country. Workers and citizens may have to know that our history is distorted. The liberation of this country, especially Second Chimurenga, was mainly started in the factories by trade unionists. You can talk of Njambo, Masochandov, Joshua Nkomo, Kadali, Clement, and many other early trade unionists who then went on to form political movements, nationalist political movement. This is the legacy that they left us, and this is that us you have to struggle.
You spoke on peaceful demonstrations, right?
Yes.
Yes, and recently you have declared Monday as a day of social justice struggle.
Yeah.
Can you shed more light on that?
So we are in a terrible situation where citizens and workers are gripped in fear. Everyone is gripped in enormous fear. The state is brutal. The state has become the major enemy of citizens and workers. It is far much more devastating. Cyclones. We've seen cyclones die.
Bear with us. It seems, it looks like Mr. Mutasa is having some internet issues over his side.
Hello, am I clear now? Hello? Hello?
Welcome back, Mr. Mutasa. You were speaking on the Social Justice Struggle Day, Monday.
Yes, so the country is gripped in fear. People are afraid of the state. The state is brutal and very dangerous to citizens. So we want to free workers and citizens from this fear. And this is why we have called for the Mondays to be designated the Social Justice Struggle Day. Every Monday, wherever you are, citizens must be able to express themselves. We must not die in silence. People are starving in Epworth. People are starving in Mkoba. People are starving in Sakuba. They must not starve in silence. The state has got weapons. It has got police. It has got military. it has got armory. We do not have anything besides our voice. So it is the voice that liberated us when in the past we spoke against the social and political ills of subjugation of the colonial state. It is the voice of workers and citizens that liberated people in South Africa against apartheid. So we are saying people should speak up. We can speak up in our different ways. Let us have creative, non-violent, and peaceful protest. If you want to raise a placard on your own, raise it and send the message. If you want to move with a T-shirt with a particular message, do so. If you want in your small groups outside the workplaces, these are not strike action, outside the workplaces, during your own free time, at lunch hour, we are encouraging workers to stand outside their workplaces, away from their workplaces, and raise placards, talk about these issues. We are encouraging trade union leaders, community leaders, church leaders, civic society leaders to talk to their communities about the challenges. We are encouraging parents to sit down and talk to the children who now have mental challenges and psychological issues because of the failure of their parents to provide for them. They must tell them what the problem is. For labor, we have said we've got 3 demands. The first demand is that every worker must get their salaries in US dollars. This is justified. Every price of every goods and services are now pegged in US dollars except for salaries. So we want to demand salaries in US dollars. They were in 2018. The second demand is that we need to end poverty, especially the high cost of living that I've been speaking about. If you look at our poverty, is man-made, it can be resolved. It's not natural. It is a result of many decades and many years of corruption and grand corruption that we witnessed this year, especially during the COVID gate. It is also a result of poor policies like the austerity measures that Minister Mthuli Ncube is putting in this country, which are devastating all our social provisions and social services and also incomes. It is a result of poor governance. Our poor human rights record is impeding economic recovery and foreign direct investment. So this can be resolved, this can be addressed. The third aspect, we are saying, this country has no proper COVID-19 response policy. We saw what happened during the lockdowns. People were just dumped and suffered and starved in their homes without social assistance. We want the government to come up with an inclusive and humane and progressive COVID-19 response policy that addresses the issues of those who are vulnerable. They must be given social assistance. It must address the issue of job carnage that we are witnessing. It must protect jobs. It also must protect incomes, both in the formal and in the informal economy. It also must lead to opening of hospitals. We can't be in a pandemic and hospitals are ill-equipped. Hospitals are abandoned. Doctors and nurses are demotivated, they are not at work. You can't use military rule and command to force a doctor to carry out a particular surgical process. You are endangering citizens. We don't want the doctors to be conscripted in the army. We want to be able to go and get services to civilian hospitals. So these are the main demands that we want. And depending on which organization you are and your area of focus, if you are focusing on corruption, speak up about corruption every Monday. If you are focusing on child labor, speak up against child labor. If you are focusing on marginalization of minorities and the marginalization of women and youth and unemployment, speak up about those issues. But what we are calling citizens to do is to speak up every Monday. This struggle is not going to be won in a week or 1 month. We are going to have a lifetime struggle until we succeed. Then in between, every time and again, we call for national shutdowns, we call for national strikes, because these are constitutional. These are allowed at law, and the government must respect that.
So for now, you're saying that you're calling for peaceful demonstrations, not strikes.
We are going to call for a general strike. For now, we are calling for people to peacefully petition the government to change the policies, peacefully protest and demand that government and employers pay workers sufficient salaries. But we are already consulting, as we have already indicated. We've got a general council, which is the highest executive decision-making body in between congresses. It made a decision that we must call for a general strike for all workers, both in public and private sector, and for all workers, both in formal and informal sector. And also those who depend on workers. Students depend on the salaries of their guardians and parents, so they must also join. Landlords must join because they depend on the rentals from the working class. If we are not earning sufficient, they are also not going to earn sufficient. Employers should also join because their businesses also depend on the incomes from various other sectors. So it's for everyone, it's for citizens, even farmers who are buying their inputs using US dollars, but they are forced to sell using a moribund or a useless currency, the Zimbabwean dollar. So we are going to call for a general strike, but every Monday, it is a social justice struggle day. We are asking people to raise their voice. The voices of the people must be heard by those who said they are listening presidents, they are listening government, they are a new dispensation, they are second republic. They must hear our voices. So Mondays, they are not strikes per se, but people should protest, people should petition, people should come in their groups and conscientize workers. Let us use them as days to unite citizens against all divisions that we have, against political polarizations. There's no room for political supporters to be polarized on this matter. ZANU-PF members buy in okay. You can't use your membership card to get discounts. MDC members buy in TM, buy in okay. So we must be united on this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mthatha. So what is the role of ZCTU in the current crisis as prevalent in the country over wages?
So our role has not changed. We still seek to get a good governance in terms of our mission. We also seek to get a good macroeconomic framework. So in that role, we seek to advise government through many policy briefs that we issue, through many policy guides that we issue. We always seek to advise government in a number of ways. We also seek to negotiate on behalf of the workers. So when you see us changing from police advisors and from advisory roles, we are carrying out our mandate that is there in our constitution, and that is also there in the legislative framework that governs industrial relations in this country and the constitution. So we also bargaining seriously with government. This is why you see us in the tripartite negotiating forum. Already we have declared a deadlock because the government has not listened to our advice. You remember when they tried to put the 2% tax on electronic transfers, we advised them against such a dangerous austerity measure where taxes are increased and incomes are compressed. We said that type of austerity will suffocate this economy and destroy it. So they also jailed us for demanding that they pay better salaries, and they also stop putting out or bringing out the Zim dollar. So we advise them, we bargain with them, but we also demand on behalf of the workers. So we are not going to change from what we've been doing. We've been advising government and employers. We've been bargaining with government and employers. We've also been taking collective action. So at the moment, our advices were not taken on board. Collective bargaining has failed. In the TNF, we declared a deadlock in May after trying to bargain since February against Zim dollar salaries. So we now have a deadlock. On the NJNC, you have also heard that public sector workers have also deadlocked. Yesterday, the 3 ministers tried to talk to teachers. There was also a deadlock, a clear deadlock. and nothing is working on the bargaining agenda. So our role now is to mobilize workers. And so we are telling every worker, everywhere you are, don't starve, organize. If workers want to starve in this country, then they should continue being silent. But what we are telling workers now is, let us unite. All unions must unite. All union leaders must speak with one voice. We are glad the teachers are now speaking with one voice. In the past, we used to have different voices about whether workers should be paid in US dollars. But all union leaders are now speaking with one voice. So our role is to unite labor and to coordinate labor and to consult, to carry out necessary consultations on every step that we are taking. And this is what we are doing. So labor is coming in a different role. We are no longer bargaining. We are no longer advising government. We are using our collective power to demand justice, fairness, and equity.
Mr. Mtasa, government has often accused worker representatives of having political backing from the opposition to destabilize the country. How do you respond to this?
That is nonsense. That is nonsense. We would want to hear any politician of note who will stand up and say so. All the politicians that we have in this country, who are left in this country, they were quite junior when the second Chimrenga was waged. All of them were organized by trade unionists. They were organized by a trade unionist of repute, the Joshua Nkomos. They all were educated. They got their political education from a trade unionist. So they can't tell us that trade unions have got boundaries in this country. What is politics in any case? The best the definition of politics, which is quite simple but all-encompassing, is that politics is who gets what, when, and how, according to Harold. If you look at that definition, if we are talking about who gets what in the economy, when workers work and produce, when we talk about who gets what, how do we distribute the gains of production, that is politics. When we say when and how, that is politics. But above all, the trade union movement in this country has always produced all the political movement. We produced the ZAPU, we produced the ZANU, we produced the MDC. But we are not working on anyone's agenda. It was not the objective of the liberation struggle that people should die in Nyazonya, people should die in Chimoyo, for the elite to come and get everything, for the elite to come and capture and enjoy everything while the majority are suffering. It was actually the objective of the liberation struggle that our labor relations must be progressive. Workers must get better salaries. Workers must get better housing. The liberation struggle started in the factories, and the main demands were sound and fair labor relations. So no one can say that and not look stupid. Anyone who is saying that is stupid and that is nonsense.
Mr. Mtasa, workers are demanding unrealistic wages in US dollars, such as 520 from the government. Do you feel that these demands are justifiable given the economic situation in Zimbabwe?
So, what is the economic situation in Zimbabwe? The economic situation in Zimbabwe is that we are a highly favored country, highly richly blessed country that is endowed with natural mineral resources and good weather and everything that a country that must succeed should have. What is happening in the country is we are getting enough. We've got enough. Everywhere in this country, people are panning gold. Everywhere in this country, people are mining platinum, chrome, black granite, you name it. All our minerals are being mined and going out there. What we don't have is accountability. No one is accounting for the mineral resources that we are sending out there. At some point, the Reserve Bank indicated that we were losing 1.8, close to 2 billion annually in terms of illicit financial outflows. If you look at what is happening in this country, it is corruption, grand corruption and political corruption. You have seen the COVID gate scandal, 60 million going to 2 people or 3 people, just like that. People inflating prices. A price of a mask that cost $4 was being sold for $28 US. This is what is destroying the country. So this country has got everything that it needs. If you look at our manufacturing capacity, if you look at our agriculture capacity, what is destroying the country is that people who have taken all the land are not producing on the land that they have taken. What is destroying the country is people who have been given inputs up to 500,000 US dollars as farm mechanization loans or grants. People still have failed to produce anything. They are heaping all the debt on citizens. What is destroying the country is these debts that government is incurring without parliament, the debts that are not explained, that cannot be shown how they were used. You can't link them to infrastructure. You can't link them to social provision in hospitals and schools. They are just debts that are incurred to fatten the ruling class and to put money into the pockets of the few. This is what is destroying the country. 520 that teachers are asking, they used to earn it. So how can someone say we can't afford it? We started on US dollars in 2009 and people were earning it. People in the banking sector were earning a minimum of $632. And some people were earning 1,000 US dollars. And this is not out of this world. In Botswana, they are earning those salaries. In Mozambique, they are earning those salaries. In Zambia, they are earning those salaries. What is out of this world is the amount of looting by the political elite and their cronies in business. This is what is causing people to fail to be paid better salaries. And this is why we cannot allow people to say our agenda is dictated by politicians. It's not politicians who tell us that we are hungry. It's not politicians who show our kids that they have no clothing. Our agenda is dictated by the material conditions that we are living, the suffering, the starvation that workers are going through. So this country is able to pay sufficient and decent salaries. What is needed is politicians must stop looting. They must put in place good governance, and we must jealously guard our resources. If you look at how China is plundering our resources, there are some unscrupulous transactions happening. Our members in the transport sector indicate that they carry chrome, and it is indicated in the weigh bridges, in local weigh bridges, that they are carrying 22 tons. But when they get to Mozambique, when they are putting in the ship, it has to be genuine and legitimate weigh bridges. They see that they were carrying 31 tons. And these are 200 vehicles a day. And this is money that we are losing, that is going outside. In some of the concessions, the mining concessions that we have, some of the transactions and the deals that we have, some of the commercial loans that we have, they don't make sense. They are not economical. They don't make economic sense to the country. This is the transparency that we need for everyone to be able to equitably share the resources that we have in abundance in this country. It's quite a sad paradox that we have got poverty in amongst a sea of plenty.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mtasa. So what's your take on unwanted dismissal under the guise of cost-cutting measures by employers without notice or compensation?
So, like I've said, this country, like what the late Joshua Nkomo said and opined, that he learned this lesson later in life, that people can get a country can get freedom without its people being free. This country is not migrated from colonial Rhodesia. The Zimbabwean government carefully took over and inherited the colonial setup of the colonial state. So their policing, their laws, their labor relations and labor practices are colonial. If you look at many of our laws, when we had progressed with the Labor Relations Act, it has been amended many times and whittled down. We also have a judiciary that is obviously exercising and practicing judiciary activism. Instead of dispensing justice fairly, they are also pushing forward the neoliberal agenda. They are also pushing the political agenda of the ruling class that is seeking to decimate the working class, especially the trade unions. So we have a crisis in the sense that our laws, our institutions, and the practices are inimical to the interests of the working class. So you cannot talk of collective bargaining, for example, like I've mentioned before, because those institutions have been destroyed. So there is nothing really that one workers can say defend them. So if you look at one-term dismissals, these are in line with the government policy. The government's policy is neoliberal. They have taken an austerity measure. They've recreated colonial practices as ease of doing business. Ease of doing business is nothing like Chibaro. It's Chibaro in the past. It is the colonial master and servant industrial relations practices of the colonial regime. So workers are not protected by the law. The law is interpreted in funny ways, very, very sad ways. Workers are also not protected by the government. Should they use their collective power, they are then also brutalized by the state through the police. So we have a combined effort by the business and the government to vanquish and to destroy labor. But if you look at the result, it is going to be disastrous. It is actually disastrous as we speak to even the businesses themselves. For example, look at the low disposable incomes that workers are earning. Many companies now are in distress. There is low domestic aggregate demand in this country. So if you pay your workers money that is insufficient to buy bread, the bread making companies, Lobels, Insco, whatever, they are going to close. They are going to reduce their capacity. So workers businesses are in distress. We are witnessing many calls for retrenchments. This is going to go on. For workers, the only way to challenge the dual evils of state authoritarianism and neoliberalism is to gang up. So workers must gang up and defend their territory. If we don't do so, we are going to see workers going home with nothing. People are being retrenched even in government and getting pension of 23 Zim dollars, which is less than 200, which is almost 200 or 230 US dollars. In other private sectors, retirements, people are going with nothing, with 6,000 Zim dollars, which is 60 US dollars for working for 40 years. So we need to stop this carnage by focusing on collective action. It's only collective action that is going to liberate workers of Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mtasa, for gracing us today. That was Mr. Mtasa, the president of ZCTU, and is speaking on collective effort without being affiliated to any party, but all people, all citizens engaging in peaceful demonstrations to fight against the crisis that we are facing as workers. Mr. Mtasa, your last words to the viewers that are listening to us.
So my last word is that, as I've said, and also quoting John Lewis, this struggle is not going to be a one-day struggle. It's not going to be a one-week struggle, 1 month struggle, even a 1 year struggle. It is a lifetime, and each generation must play its part. The generation that liberated us from colonial rule played their part, and they paid a price for that. The generation that liberated us from a one-party state, the Morgan Tsvangirais, the Edgar Tekeres, they played their part And now we are facing the same thing, a reincarnation of a one-party state agenda by the state, and which is inimical to the interests of all of us. We are facing colonial working conditions again. It is the responsibility of this generation to play its part. So we are calling on everyone, every worker, every citizen to play their part. We are also calling on the conscience of those who are in power, that they should stop this brutality, they should stop this dictatorship and this authoritarianism and fascism. We need to dialogue as a country. We need social dialogue between government, labor, and business. We are also calling on the international community. Our government is brutal. They are going to kill all of us. We speak, but we also act, but we know they may kill us any day. They are brutal. So we are calling on the international community to watch over us. We need the African Union, we need the SADC, we need the UN to keep an eye on us and stop the government from butchering and from killing its own people and brutalizing its own people. We are also calling on the international community to assist Zimbabwe in any ways possible, especially on emergency humanitarian aid. Many people are starving in the ghetto. Many people are starving in the villages. The 7.7 million that was declared by World Food Program last year, I think it's now much lower than what is on the ground. Many people are in need of food aid. So we call on Zimbabweans. You are on your own liberators. No one is going to liberate you. If you're a member of a trade union, it is your responsibility to join other workers and demand justice.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mutasa. And also thank you so much to our viewers. And we thank you for your comments. We have been seeing them, and thank you so much for engaging. For more information, please like our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter page, 263 Chat, and also don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube page, 263 Chat, and visit our website, www.263chat.com. Thank you so much.